This is Transformation, the Ultimate Surrender. This is a series, and this is 101. This is message number 102, the flowering of salvation. And we begin by giving you our text as we usually do. Our text comes from the book of Matthew's, and we're going to focus on Matthew's, the 16th chapter. Matthew's, let's put that up there. Matthew's, the 16th chapter, and the 19th verse. And it reads, I will give you the keys to the kingdom. And here are our keys down here. And we're going to move them up, move that key up to our box, our first box down here. And that first box then becomes our key, and we'll move it into the first box. And then the message is entitled The Flowering of Salvation, as you can see, message 102. So the keys here, this is the keys to the kingdom, and this is Jesus talking to Peter after he had asked them, who do human beings think I am? And then he asked them, who do you think that I am? And Peter indicated that he thought he was the Lord, the Savior of the world. And he said, flesh and blood didn't reveal this to you. It had to come from heaven. And because you are revealing that or sharing that with me and with us, I'm going to give you the kingdom to the kingdom. And he said to him, I'll give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and on this rock I will build my church, and whatever you loose in heaven will be loosened on earth, and whatever you loosen on earth will be loosened in heaven. And so we begin our discussion with looking once again at the horizontal and vertical axis. We had said that there was a horizontal axis that runs through life. Make this our horizontal axis here, and put some increments of time to indicate the cycle, and we'll continue to roll through life, and we'll put it, this means we were born, this is birth, and over here is death. And we continue to track along what I consider a horizontal axis. At some point in our life, there is a crossing. We'll make that a hard green. Well, actually, we'll make it blue. At some point in this axis, something happens, and we begin to ascend vertically. And I'm arguing, and I've argued in the past lessons, that something happens in our life at this point. We hit what is called a wall, and and when we hit that wall, we begin to look toward a creator. Now, if we could look at this as a vertical box, we could put this as sort of the physical plane, and we would make this our spiritual plane up here. And when we hit this crisis, this issue that happens to us, this thing, whatever it is, it could be a near-death experience, or it could be some white light experience, it could be really some kind of epiphany. We realize that all of what's been created, all of what exists, it didn't happen by mistake. It was not an accident, that it was a part of the world and in which we live. And because of that, because we realize that this is a world in which we live, we realize that there's more to life. And at this particular point, I have argued that we begin to ascend into the unknown. Naturally, this area up here is an unknown. for us because it's a spiritual area. We can't see it, touch it. We can't measure it by any empirical data, but we know something exists because there are elements of our life known as love. Um, uh, there are things that exist in our life over here that we call love, that we call peace, that we call tranquility, that we call patience and kindness. All these things exist on a human plane, and we know that when we get here, somehow or another we begin to realize these things exist, even though at this level we were not able to navigate those things. Now, and I'll make my case that when we hit this point, this critical point right here, we begin to ascend, become aware, get to know that there's a God out there, and at that particular point, we can take advantage of these things, but we have to come back to the physical plane, and at that point, though, when we get on this side of the line, we have begun to change. Let's put change here. And this change is what makes us able to flower, and it certainly allows us at this particular point to receive the keys to the kingdom. And at that particular point, we can say we begin to flower into what I consider somewhat of a lotus flower. Now, this particular flower, as you will come to know, is not just any old flower. It's a flower that can be certainly spoken of as sort of a miracle flower to a certain extent, because at this particular point in our life, this particular flower allows things to really happen to us. It allows things to really progress, and it allows things to progress, and so we want to call it to a certain extent a lotus flower because of that fact. And when we this particular flower is a wonderful example of what God can do. This flower blooms in a pond or a small lake, and it only can grow in water, and it only grows in the mud of the earth, and in the daytime it blooms, many of them do, and at nighttime it descends back onto the bottom of the earth. And at that particular point, it begins to open up. And I think that what we're sharing with you is that this is part of our life. This is part of our opening up to life. And at that particular point, we begin to utilize this key that Jesus was speaking of. He told Peter, I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom. And we need to make sure that we understand that the kingdom is not here in the physical plane. The kingdom is at the spiritual plane. And what we're talking about, if we draw our stick man, I like to draw our little stick man over here, a little smiley face. We operate and live on both a physical plane, but we also live on a spiritual plane. And because of that, at some particular point, we have to move from the physical to the spiritual. And when he talks about the keys to the kingdom, he's talking about helping us move from the physical plane to the spiritual plane. And at this particular point in our life, we might be able. But here's the critical component. After we've gone from the physical, we've ascended into the spiritual, we now can have what is called eternal peace, tranquility. We can be kind and unconditional love. That we come back to earth, and when we come back to earth, we come back for as a changed person, and it's that change that we are talking about in our series on the ultimate transformation, because at that particular point, we can move to the spiritual plane, and at that particular point, we also can begin to flower. And because we're able to flower, because we're able to grow in knowledge of the Lord, and because we're able to know and learn His Word in a different way, we are now ready to what I call benefit from the powers of it. The powers of it, as we shared with you several lessons ago, and we will in our lessons in subsequent weeks. The powers of it is the power of God, because God is it. We'll say God is it. God is it. God is. God is love. We'll discuss this further in our next lesson.